Hi everyone, welcome to my new video blog on the gods of the Monomyth. This series will explore the archetypes of world mythology, which includes characters like the Creator, the Trickster, the Skyfather and the Earth Mother, to name just a few. Today I'll be examining the Preserver, a goddess of eternal youth who can be found throughout the continent of Eurasia. The 12 deities I'm using to rebuild this goddess are Soma, a Hindu god from the Rig Veda who personified the sacred food of immortality. He's one of the oldest gods on this list, appearing in the 2nd millennium BC. Number 2 in this list is Immortality, the goddess of eternal life, who appears in the Persian hymns known as the Gathas during the 2nd millennium BC. Next we have Mao, an Egyptian cat god from the Book of the Dead, who is said to be the embodiment of the sun god Ra. He enters the timeline at around 1550 BC. During the same century, Zhiwangmu, a goddess of immortality, was mentioned in the oracle bone scripts. These ancient Chinese texts were often used for divination. As we enter the 1st millennium BC, the Tree of Eternal Life makes an appearance in the Book of Genesis from the Old Testament. It is guarded by the cherubim, whose role was to prevent anyone from eating its divine fruit. At around the same time, the Greek goddess Hebe was mentioned in Homer's epics, dated to the 8th century BC. It was Hebe's duty to provide the Olympians with their precious nectar and ambrosia, a divine substance that kept them young and immortal. Her Roman counterpart was Juventus, who can be traced back to the 3rd century BC. Unlike Hebe, Juventus was also linked to the immortality of the state and the emperors who ran it. Returning to the Hebrew faith, the Gnostic texts of the 2nd century BC refer to the daughters of men, whom alchemists later believed possessed the secrets of eternal life. They believed the secrets of alchemy were passed down by the patriarchs and hidden in esoteric lore. During the 4th century, tales of the Jade Rabbit began to appear in East Asia. Just like the alchemists of the West, he was often seen mixing the elixir of life using a pestle and mortar. Legend says that he lived on the moon preparing his divine drink for the gods. The Philippines also had tales about immortal food. According to 9th century folklore, a race of immortals known as the Tamawo often gave the rice of eternal life to humans they had fallen in love with. The only catch was, once eaten, they would never get to see their family again. At around the same time, on the other side of the continent, we find the Norse goddess Idun preparing golden apples for her family in Asgard. This divine fruit granted her fellow gods with both immortality and eternal youth. Finally, the Irish goddess Niamh enters the timeline during the 12th century. According to the Celtic cycles, she lived in a paradise called Tinanog, known as the Land of Eternal Youth. Like the Fae of the Philippines, she also liked to bring mortals to her realm, promising them the gift of immortality. It's worth noting that these dates represent the first time in history that a particular deity was mentioned. However, it doesn't represent the origin of this archetype, which would have existed in oral storytelling for hundreds, if not thousands of years earlier. The question is, at what point in history did the Preserver first appear? The goddess of youth forms a part of the Monomyth, a hypothetical story that may have originated back as far as 70,000 years ago. At this important juncture of human history, our ancestors migrated out of Africa and began to explore the world around them. The first migration took them across the Middle East and Indonesia, where they eventually settled in Australia 50,000 years ago. If the Monomyth existed at this point, it would have been in its infancy, with only a few characters and themes in place. However, based on my research, the Preserver is not present on this continent, so it's unlikely she was a part of this early culture. Global temperatures would continue to rise and fall over the next 40,000 years, allowing humans to explore new lands and cross into new continents. Around 25,000 years ago, a band of hunter-gatherers managed to cross a land bridge from Russia to Alaska, introducing them to the Americas. These early migrants settled North and South America between 20 and 14,000 BCE, but again, there is no sign of the Preserver in their myths, suggesting she was not a part of their traditions. It's likely then that she was a much later addition to the Monomyth. As you can see on this map, the Preserver has a strong presence in Europe and the Middle East, suggesting she may have originated in this region. One of the earliest mentions of this archetype can be found in the Book of the Dead, written around 1550 BCE. In this guise, the preserver was male and guarded the sacred food of the gods. He also appears in the Old Testament as a cherubim, suggesting these cultures shared a common heritage. This makes sense, as they're both a part of the Afro-Asiatic language family, which some linguists believe can be traced back to the Levant region around 10 to 12,000 years ago. At this time, it was called Proto-Afro-Asiatic, which dispersed east into Egypt, west into Mesopotamia, and north into Anatolia. Wherever a language travels, its cultural roots tend to follow, especially its stories and traditions. This would explain why the guardian of divine food in the Hebrew, Egyptian, and Akkadian literature were all men, as they shared a common root. If we move to Europe, however, you'll notice all the figures linked to the food of the gods are females, such as Heb, Neve, and Idun. They are all part of an ancient culture called the Indo-Europeans, who originated in southeast Russia around 6,000 years ago. The Indo-Europeans and the Afro-Asiatic family are separated by both language and culture, but geographically they are very close neighbours. Is it possible then that both these cultures share a common origin? They both emerged during the end of the Neolithic, a time when humans had settled the lands and established farming. This sounds appropriate for the emergence of the preserver, as she cultivated the food of the gods, much as a farmer would cultivate crops in their fields. However, it's possible we can go back even further. In China, Zhiwangmu was originally regarded as a feral goddess who lived in the wilderness before the dawn of civilization. Additionally, in the Old Testament, we have Adam and Eve living in a pre-civilized world, depicting a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. If we follow the logic of these stories, then the preserver may have originated at the end of the Mesolithic era, when our ancestors were transitioning from a hunter-gatherer lifestyle to one of agriculture. Interestingly, between the Indo-Europeans and the Afro-Asiatic people, there is an archaeological site in Turkey called Göbekli Tepe. This primeval temple is full of megaliths, hunting art, and religious iconography. There are also pillars depicting godlike beings, suggesting these Stone Age people worshipped a pantheon of gods. At this point, I'd like to put forward a personal theory, but please note I am not an expert in archaeology or linguistics, so this is only a layperson's point of view. Due to the concentration of the preserver in Europe and the Middle East, I would say she first emerged in Anatolia at the cusp of the Neolithic and the Mesolithic, which dates to between 8000 and 5000 BCE. If she was a part of the Göbekli Tepe culture, then this location would have acted as a bridge between the Indo-Europeans and the Afro-Asiatic people. Although she may not have been included in the earlier part of the monomyth, the preserver has come to represent an essential part of the story. Put simply, she prepares the divine food that makes the gods immortal. Without her divine elixir, the gods would eventually age and die. In essence, it is the preserver who separates the gods from the mortals. Indeed, her food of eternal life became one of the most prized possessions in world myth, one which giants and mortals often try to steal or take by force. If you want to learn more about the archetypes of prehistory, then feel free to follow my social networks below. My unabridged articles are all published on Patreon, a subscription service which offers you loads of extra content, including a reconstruction of each archetype and an illustrated guide to their roles and functions in world myth. If you want to continue watching this series, you can subscribe just below or hit the notification bell, which lets you know the moment I upload a video. Thanks for watching.